For 500,000 years, Earth was silent. Not because humanity was gone, but because humanity was waiting. The galaxy had long forgotten us. To the Sarah Empire and countless alien civilizations, Earth was little more than a backwater world, conquered, enslaved, and filed away in the records of history. Our species was marked as broken. Our will to resist. Supposedly crushed. But silence can be a dangerous thing. Because silence is not always surrender. Sometimes, silence is preparation. For generations, humanity endured in shadows. We learned the laws of our oppressors, studied their fleets, memorized their patterns of war. We built in secret, disguised our movements, and cloaked our ambitions behind the facade of obedience. The Sarah Empire saw humans as tools. They thought our spirit had been tamed. Yet every lash of their cruelty, every insult, every humiliation carved something deeper into us. Not despair, but memory. And memory became resolve. When the day finally came, it began not with a great declaration or a blinding superweapon, but with something far more unsettling: nothing. Entire Sarah outposts went dark. Fleets reported strange disappearances. Colonies whispered of sabotage, of whispers in the void. The Empire, so accustomed to ruling through fear, began to feel something it had not known in centuries: unease. Because their enemy was no longer screaming in chains. Their enemy was silent. This was the first act of humanity's resurgence. Not a rebellion of fire and fury, but of shadows and whispers. Where the Empire flaunted its strength, we used precision. Where they sought glory, we sought impact. One ship could vanish an entire convoy. One strike team could cripple a command hub. One human decision could send ripples across an entire sector. And the Empire began to ask a question it had never dared to voice. What if humanity was never broken? The galaxy watched in confusion. To most species, humans were little more than myths, slaves hidden away on a blue planet, too primitive to matter. But now, strange reports spread across star systems. An admiral found her fleet cut apart by an enemy she never even saw. A governor awoke to find his palace burned, yet no guards reported an intruder. A merchant convoy vanished along well-patrolled lanes, as if swallowed by the void itself. At first, many dismissed these stories as exaggerations. Pirates. Internal dissent. Political cover-ups. But the pattern grew too precise. Too deliberate. And when the rumors began to align, one phrase spread like wildfire across the galaxy. They are back. For the Sarah Empire, this was not just an inconvenience. It was humiliation. To rule through fear requires the illusion of control. And nothing shattered that illusion faster than the thought of a forgotten species rising against them, silently, methodically, without fanfare. To the Empress and her court, humanity's actions were more than rebellion. They were blasphemy. How dare slaves choose their own time? How dare a conquered world rewrite the script of history? And yet, the evidence was undeniable. What made humanity terrifying was not our numbers. Not our technology. The Sarah Empire still dwarfed us in raw power. But power without certainty is fragile. And we had mastered the art of uncertainty. The galaxy trembled not because humans were winning battles, but because we were reshaping the very psychology of conflict. Silence became our weapon. Fear became our shield. And patience became our greatest strength. If you are listening now, ask yourself. What does it mean to wait for 500,000 years? What kind of people emerge when suffering is no longer just endured, but studied, refined, and turned into purpose? That was the human answer. Not rage. Not mercy. But a cold, unshakable clarity. In those first strikes, humanity did not roar. We did not announce our return. We did not demand recognition. We simply acted. And the galaxy, for the first time in eons, fell quiet. Because in the silence of humanity's rise, every empire, every admiral, every ruler asked themselves the same question. If this is only the beginning, what comes next? The Sera Empire had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Their fleets stretched across thousands of worlds, their laws etched into the bones of conquered peoples. To most, resistance was unthinkable. To resist was to vanish, to be erased so thoroughly that history itself forgot you. And yet, against this colossus, humanity moved unseen. It began with silence. Then with whispers. And now, it spread like a shadow across the stars. Entire systems faltered. Supply lines collapsed. Governors vanished. No battle announcements, no calls to arms, only sudden, devastating losses. The Empress's advisors called it sabotage. Pirates. Internal dissent. But deep within the court, a truth was whispered only in private. It is them. The humans. And once spoken, the words could not be taken back. The galaxy's perception shifted almost overnight. For centuries, humans were slaves, a conquered people hidden under the iron weight of imperial control. But now, stories clashed with reality. A lone Sera battleship reported an encounter with a vessel unlike any seen before, small, human-made, yet impossibly fast, with weapons that struck not for glory, but for precision. Entire squadrons crippled in minutes. A provincial capital awoke to find its defense grid disabled, its command center destroyed, yet not a single civilian harmed. The invaders did not conquer. They did not occupy. They left only silence and ruins behind. It was as if humanity's goal was not territory, but message. The message was clear: we are here. We are watching. We choose the terms. For the Empire, this was worse than open war. An enemy they could not predict. An enemy they could not see. An enemy who fought without pattern, without ego, without warning. Fear began to spread, not from humanity's strength, but from their restraint. Because if this was what humans chose to do in silence, what would they unleash when they finally decided to speak? The galaxy reacted in confusion. Some species cheered from the shadows, whispering of long-awaited justice. Others trembled, fearing that the humans' silence hid something far more dangerous. And then came the Harari. The Harari were an ancient, neutral species, known not for conquest, but for memory. They were historians, observers of the rise and fall of empires. Their fleets were few, their weapons weak, yet their words carried weight. For when the Harari spoke, they spoke not of rumor, but of truth. And the Harari said this: do not mistake humanity's silence for isolation. They endured, they studied, they adapted. But there is something more. In their silence, they have seen what we all ignored. The galaxy leaned closer. What do you mean? They asked. And the Harari answered with words that chilled even the Empress. The humans are not the greatest threat. They are only the first to awaken. This revelation spread faster than any fleet. What did it mean? What had humanity seen? Was there something beyond the Empire, beyond the reach of galactic law? The Sera Empire dismissed it as lies, an attempt to weaken their rule. But doubt had already taken root. And once doubt begins, even the strongest throne begins to shake. Meanwhile, humanity pressed forward. We struck not at random, but with purpose. Communications hubs, fleet depots, hidden arsenals, all dismantled with surgical precision. The Empire scrambled, redeploying fleets, tightening control, lashing out at any world suspected of rebellion. But this only fed the fire. Because every act of cruelty, every heavy-handed punishment, reminded the galaxy of something it had long forgotten: empires are not eternal. And the more the Empire tried to crush the whispers, the louder those whispers became. For the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy trembled. Not because humanity had conquered it, but because humanity had shown a truth far more dangerous than conquest. That silence could be power. That patience could be weaponized. That endurance could outlast tyranny itself. Ask yourself now. What is more terrifying, an enemy who shouts their intentions, or one who simply watches, and waits, and strikes when you least expect it? That was the lesson humanity carried. That was the lesson the Empire now faced. And beneath it all lingered the Harari's warning. Humanity is not the greatest threat. They are only the first to awaken. The Empress raged. Her admirals swore vengeance. Entire fleets were dispatched to hunt down what they called the human infestation. But the more they searched, the less they found. Because the truth was simple. Humanity was no longer where the Empire thought. We had spread. We had grown. And we had waited far too long to be stopped now. This was not just rebellion. It was a message to every enslaved people, every forgotten world, every silent species. If humanity could rise after 500,000 years in chains, then what excuse did anyone else have? And that thought, more than our ships, more than our strikes, more than our silence, was the seed of something the Empire could never contain. Hope. The galaxy was watching. The Empire was trembling. And humanity, for the first time in ages, was moving. But the Harari's warning lingered in the void. A truth yet to be revealed. A shadow deeper than silence. Because in awakening humanity, the galaxy had also stirred something far older. Something patient. Something waiting. And soon, everyone would see it. The galaxy had not known fear like this for millennia. Not fear of conquest. Not fear of war. But fear of uncertainty. Humanity had risen from silence. The Sarah Empire trembled. The Harari's words echoed across the stars. Humanity is not the greatest threat. They are only the first to awaken. And so, a question spread like fire. If humanity had endured 500,000 years in chains and emerged stronger, then what else had been waiting? The Empire, desperate to retain control, lashed out. Entire fleets scoured the void. Worlds suspected of sympathy to humanity were purged. Historians and Harari alike were silenced, their archives seized, their voices extinguished. But none of it stopped the unraveling. Because the more the Empire sought to control the narrative, the more it exposed its own weakness. And in the cracks, in the silence, humanity kept striking, measured, deliberate, unstoppable. Yet even as we fought, even as the galaxy's eyes turned to us, a quiet truth grew heavier. This war was not the end. It was only the beginning. It started at the edge of mapped space. Explorers from a minor species stumbled upon ruins, vast structures buried beneath dead worlds, their surfaces marked with symbols no one could translate. Some said they were relics of an ancient empire. Others claimed they were weapons. But then the Harari spoke again. Their voices, weary, almost breaking, carried a single word. Architects. The architects. Not conquerors. Not rulers. But makers. They were older than the Empire, older than any known species. It was whispered they had shaped the very framework of the galaxy, worlds, stars, perhaps even life itself. And then, they had vanished. No one knew why. No one dared to ask. Until now. Signs began to appear. At the edges of forgotten space, strange signals emerged, patterns too precise to be natural, too vast to be dismissed as random. Fleets sent to investigate never returned. Entire systems went dark, their stars themselves dimming, as though something had swallowed their light. The Empire denied it. But denial could not erase the silence left behind. And for the Harari, there was no denial. They knew the truth, though they feared to speak it. The architects had not vanished. They had only been waiting. Humanity's rise was not the catalyst of their return. It was only the signal. For when one species awakens, others will follow. And in that awakening, the architects stirred. Not as saviors. Not as destroyers. But as judges. The galaxy had always believed itself vast. Thousands of species, millions of worlds, countless empires rising and falling. But to the architects, this was nothing more than a single breath in the life of the cosmos. Where others saw permanence, the architects saw experiment. Where others saw empires, they saw only fleeting sparks. And to them, the galaxy was nearing its conclusion. This was the truth humanity glimpsed in silence. When we endured slavery, when we watched, when we learned, we did not only prepare for freedom. We prepared for what lay beyond freedom. Because endurance teaches perspective. And humanity, more than any, understood what it meant to wait. So when the architects stirred, we were not surprised. Not fully. Not completely. Because deep in our collective memory, in the myths we carried even as slaves, there had always been whispers of forces beyond comprehension. Stories of creators, destroyers, watchers in the dark. Perhaps they were only stories. Perhaps not. But now the galaxy would find out. The Sarah Empire, proud and unyielding, tried to meet this shadow as they met all others, with fleets and fire. It did not matter. Worlds fortified for millennia fell in silence. Armadas simply vanished. And for the first time in its long, tyrannical history, the Empire confronted an enemy it could not intimidate. Not because the architects destroyed them outright, but because the architects did not even notice them. To beings so ancient, so vast, the Empire was no more significant than dust on the wind. And yet, humanity was different. We had endured longer chains, deeper silence, harsher trials. We had risen not with arrogance, but with patience. And in that patience, in that silence, we had grown closer to the architect's nature than we realized. The Harari saw it. Other species whispered it. And perhaps, the architects themselves would judge it. The galaxy trembled. The Empire faltered. The architects stirred. And humanity stood at the center of it all, an unlikely fulcrum between what was and what would be. So now, ask yourself. What does it mean to be human, in the face of such vastness? What does it mean to rise from silence, when silence itself may be the language of the cosmos? Perhaps our war with the Empire was never about conquest. Perhaps it was preparation. Not to rule. Not to dominate. But to endure what comes next. Because the architects are not conquerors. They are not tyrants. They are something far more terrifying. They are inevitable. And in that inevitability, only one question remains. When the architects judge the galaxy. When they decide what endures and what is erased. Will humanity's silence be enough?